Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness is now in theaters, and this is a spoiler review of the movie because there is a lot to talk about. So if you've not seen the movie yet, I am going to talk fully in detail about some of the things that happen in it. And this review is a couple of days late, in fact. I was going to do this earlier in the weekend, but then I wanted to see it a second time before I could comment on certain things and see if my opinions on that change on the second viewing. And so without further ado, here we go. Before that, can we just address the trailers for a minute? Because I feel like the marketing of this movie is not the best when it comes to hiding stuff. Like, the main trailer shows the Illuminati, and I'm not entirely a fan of that. Now, I get it. Trailers often do these things to, get a hype train going, to get people excited, but I gotta be honest with you, it took away from so much of the surprise of the movie, and I feel like there could have been a lot more reception and excitement to see certain things had people not known about that before the movie started up. Because even before it started up, everyone knew exactly what was going to happen. And that's such a shame, really. But make no mistake, it doesn't take away from the fact that that bit is very cool. But we'll talk more about that in a bit. Let's talk about the one thing that was on people's minds before seeing the movie. Who's the villain? Now, if you've seen anything from the MCU over the past year and a half, you kind of guessed who the villain was going to be. And so it's no surprise that very early on, in fact, they reveal that Wanda is the villain. Now, what is she up to? Essentially, she's been corrupted by the Darkhold, that evil book of dark magic that she got at WandaVision. And if you remember, she was going through that eventually at the end of that show. And it's eventually come to a point where she's harness so much power that she wants to go around, to other parts of the multiverse and find her children. However, the children that she's created in the construct in WandaVision, those aren't real. However, it turns out in one universe, in some universes, they are real, somewhere out there, and she wants to get there. And America Chavez has the power to travel the multiverse, and so she wants to harness that power and essentially be able to use it at any point in time. When I mentioned in my review that America Chavez is somewhat of a plot device at times, that's exactly what I meant. She can travel the multiverse, and so she's being chased after the entire movie by all kinds of forces. And she's good, but also it turns out to be a bit of a she's existing in this movie because we need her to do something. However, she's still very compelling as a character. I'm still excited to see her in future things going forward, and that should be very interesting. Like, I think she's a fantastic new addition to the MCU. But because of this, Wanda is relentless in this movie, and she is brutally savage at times. I really mean they go full horror with her, and it's really fantastic and still kind of jittery to see all of that go down. It's not crowd pleasing at all. Like, I think some people, when you see something like, like this, especially when it's your favorite character, you're always excited because you're like, it doesn't matter because the character is awesome. But then this movie presents such a brutal image that it's hard to be like, yeah, she destroyed everything, So a couple of claps that were in our theater were just kind of met by, what are you clapping about? Like, this is a massacre that she just committed. Now, it is to be noted that this is not the Wanda that you know, not the one that we've known. They make it very clear that this is a corrupted version of her, and that the version of her that found some acceptance and grief and all that at the end of WandaVision is trapped in there somewhere. It's important to understand that because some people have noted that it sort of messes up WandaVision. I don't think it messes up WandaVision at all. They set this up with the Scarlet Witch pretty early on. They told you that this was going to happen. They talked all about the chaos magic and all of that stuff, and that there were going to be serious repercussions to this. Now, that's one thing, but again, that's the Scarlet Witch stuff. They're handling an evil version of this. They're not talking about the version that you've come to care for. That one, hopefully, is still in there and can get out. So, when you're seeing this play out, it's like, understandable why they went this route, but it makes sense because we didn't fully get the final catharsis on certain things regarding WandaVision. It felt like they sort of wrapped it up too easily. Like, hey, she did all of these things, but it's okay. She enslaved an entire town. Big whoop. It's not exactly a big whoop. It's a big, horrible thing that she did. And so it made sense that you have to see this entire thing play out before you can plan on any kind of redemption arc in the future, which we'll see if that happens or not. So as they're going through the multiverse, they eventually end up in a spot where Mordo, played by Chiwetel Ejiofor, finally captures Strange and America Chavez, and they're brought before the Illuminati. Now this is something that people have been talking about for quite some time, and like I said, you kind of knew this was going to happen anyway because the trailers gave away the whole thing. And so when they show up there, you see the different members, and it's cool. There are a couple of members they did not show in promos. I mean, you saw Captain Marvel, you saw Captain Carter at one point because they showed that in TV spots. But I had no idea that we were going to see Black Bolt, Anson Mount from the TV series, which was okay. But that was a surprise. And of course, Reed Richards, played by John Krasinski. Now, Krasinski is a fan casting. A lot of people have talked about if they ever wanted to see Reed Richards in the MCU, it should be him, and Emily Blunt should play Sue Storm, and that was just a fan thing. Like, people would be like, hey, maybe we can do that. And they were like, oh, that's cool, maybe, I don't know, we'll see what happens. And it really seemed like it was going to stay to the forums, but it actually has happened. We do actually have him as Reed in this movie. Now, is that going to be a thing in the movie that's going to come out later as well? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe this was just a gag and a troll moment because eventually they all get murked by Wanda. Maybe that was the case or not. Maybe they're trying to set up the fact that he is going to be the same one down the line. Like it's going to be a different universe version of him. Our universe, 616. Maybe. Actually, it's very hard to tell right now because one of the things that this movie has also done is like it's made all kinds of things potentially possible, like what you could see going forward in terms of the characters, in terms of the different versions of characters. And so I'm not really making any decisions on that yet, but it was really cool to see him. And of course, the final member, that being Charles Xavier, played by Patrick Stewart, who comes in on the 90s like yellow wheelchair thingy, and even the theme played, which was awesome. Like you actually hear the cartoon series theme play. That was a nice little flourish, and it was just great seeing Patrick Stewart again as Professor X. Although, again, a surprise that would have probably worked a lot better if they hadn't given it away in the trailers. Just putting that out there. But the eventual scene that follows with Wanda basically laying waste to all of them, which felt like Disney's way of being like, hey, we got them all just to basically kill them off. That was pretty well done. And I mean, it was definitely a very brutally done sequence. There are some things that they've definitely cut away from so that you don't get an R rating, like Captain Carter being chopped in half by her own shield. That was something. That happened. So that's crazy. But something that I feel is going to come up regarding the Illuminati is the idea of reshoots, because there were some that were done for this movie, and I wouldn't be surprised if they were done to add in those cameos. Now, if that's the case, okay. I mean, it really does feel like at times, when I said in the spoiler-free review, like a tug of war between Raimi and the Marvel Studio execs. They were like, we want this and we want this. And the Illuminati stuff feels like something that was added in. And Raimi gave it his own flourish, which definitely helps quite a bit. And it sort of made it his own. But it does feel like that was the mandate decision. I'm not sure if that's the case. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But it does seem like that was the add-in. And it is about 10-15 minutes in the movie, which feels like that's in there. But it also feels like sort of disconnected from where we wanted the rest of the movie to go. But nonetheless, still, it was a cool scene, well done. Just I don't know. I don't know how much of that was in the original script. I'm curious if, eventually we get some details on, like what exactly they wanted to do with that. I also really like some of the action sequences in this movie. I couldn't talk about this in my spoiler-free review, but I hinted at it. There's a scene where they use visuals and music nicely. It's the musical note fight sequence that happens between our Strange and the corrupted Supreme Strange, who's in the darker incursion world. That was really, really awesome. And the way they used that was great. That was a fantastic scene, one of my favorite action scenes in the MCU now. And it really was just an absolute joy to watch that unfold. So definitely gets a lot of points, that particular scene. It felt like Sam Raimi and Danny Elfman, like they were already such long-time collaborators, them just coming together and like just going batshit crazy on that scene, and it's so awesome to behold. Let's talk about America Chavez a little bit more though. So yes, you don't get too much into her character, but that fact that she can travel the multiverse and knows a lot about it, it makes her very intriguing. And like I said, it is an interesting setup of what can happen with her in future installments. The idea of her learning to control her power with the emotions that she has, and essentially use that to focus in on where she wants to go. And I think all of that is handled quite nicely. On second viewing, it hit a lot better because on the first viewing, there were certain times when you're jumping around so much, it's hard to sort of settle down and sort of take in character arcs and character beats. And on the second viewing, I managed to take those in a little bit more. And I like the camaraderie that builds between her and Strange as the movie progresses. They start off not necessarily knowing what to do with one another, and since she's known another Strange who was not exactly the nicest and almost betrayed her, and that sort of haunts her. It's like, I don't know if I should trust you because you might do the same thing with me. And so eventually, when they get to become closer and become better friends, it really works out for the best. Let's talk about Dreamwalking a little bit because I feel like we've waited long enough. So Wanda is essentially doing that. She's able to traverse the multiverse in a way and essentially tap into other Wandas and other realities. One of them has her kids. When she's able to tap into that, she can essentially sort of maneuver that body. It's very twisted, dark magic, but it's like possession, essentially. And so when she sees that her kids are in that reality, she wants to get there. But when the Darkhold copy gets destroyed, she eventually is like, okay, where's the real one? And Wong is like threatened to basically take her there, which is this big tower in the mountains that is essentially her throne. She's able to run operations from there, and she's able to take over another body of Wanda and essentially use that to try and get to Strange and America. And that was also very twisted, dark stuff. The fact that they were able to do a lot of that was also really, really crazy. And that bit, eventually, when the Dreamwalking suddenly becomes a point of no return, it's like, we gotta use that now to fight fire with fire. And then later, Strange using Defender Strange's body to essentially take on Wanda and that zombified nature because he's in another universe, he can't get back to 616. That was awesome. It felt very Sam Raimi-esque. It goes full horror movie. It's a lot of fun. So definitely, that was the best part of the movie. Like, it builds to a very fun conclusion. Now, while I'm okay with a lot of the decisions they make with Wanda in this movie, the one thing I did not really like was the way it finally concluded. It felt a bit anticlimactic. It felt like there was a lot more they could have done, but it just sort of takes a step back from that and eventually just stops. Like, she basically runs into her kids and she's able to be there, but the kids are terrified because of a scary witch. And so the body of Wanda that she did possess, the one in that universe, she eventually walks over to her. She's able to like say like, no, they'll be loved. You know, I've got them. Don't worry. And Wanda, the one that we've known in that corrupted, Darkhold self of hers, she eventually goes back to 616 and she's like, okay, you know what? I'm going to destroy the Darkhold because if that's the case, that's what it is. And then she goes down with the Darkhold. Now, presumably dying, which I don't think is gonna happen, but essentially that's how it ends, and then it just cuts to the rest of the characters, and it just felt like there was a lot more they could have done there, but it just feels like it ends like very quickly. I'm not really sure how I felt about that, but yeah, that's essentially what you get. It just felt very anticlimactic after all the stuff that had already happened. It just kind of ends, so I'm not really sure if that was the best decision to make. Make no mistake though, it doesn't take away from the rest of the movie, which is also a lot of fun. It's still a very good movie, and like I said, on second viewing, it's a lot more fun. It's a lot more, there's a lot more you can take in, and it's much more better handled. I will say though, it's still got some issues here and there, yes, but overall I was a lot more satisfied. I like the post-credits scenes. I mean, the first one, I don't think anybody got it because unless you're super well-versed with the idea of Clea Strange, played by Charlize Theron apparently, then you wouldn't really know what to make of that scene. It's one of those quick blink and you miss it kind of things, but eventually when that happens, it's obviously leading into the next thing, and in the comics, she's Strange's wife. So yeah. Like Bruce Campbell though, he makes his cameo as Pizza Papa and that little punching thing that he keeps doing to himself, and then the movie just ends. I liked it. You know, some people were upset about that, but I was like, guys, you've seen Sam Raimi movies before, right? You know how that's cool. I feel like that was for the Sam Raimi aficionados, not so much the MCU people, but whatever. But if both exist in this world, then you enjoyed that. The little there has been construction going on this entire spoiler review, and it always happens right when I'm about to record. It's very upsetting to me, but anyway. So overall, yes, I can say that I'm pretty satisfied with Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I liked it a lot more on second viewing, and I think that there is somewhat of a bump that I could give it in ratings. Like, I mean, I gave it a 7.5. I might give it like an 8 now. Like, it definitely is 0.5 better. I'm curious as to what happens now. Like, maybe more viewings down the line with more things in context, it'll become even better and better, because this is still definitely one of the more unique MCU movies to exist, and it was such a joy to watch, and I'm excited to see where a lot of these arcs are going to go. So without further ado, what did you guys think of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness? Let me know all your spoiler thoughts in the comments below. Let's just go right into it. As always, if you like this, guys, please do subscribe. Thank you so much as always for watching, and to the construction guy above me who hasn't shut up this entire review, I appreciate you. Thank you. And I'll see you guys in the movies.